Present verb conjugation in English is the modification of a verb's form that expresses facts, repeated actions, a list of actions, and schedules and timetables. It is one of the easiest tenses with a simple conjugation pattern because the present simple doesn't have progressive or perfect tenses. To conjugate verbs in the present simple, we first have to understand how to identify English verbs. A verb is a word that shows an action beginning with the preposition to speak, to run, to think, to look, and so on. These words are known as infinitives, the basic form of verbs without conjugation in any tense. The best way to recognize them in any sentence is to see the change of time in a sentence. Additionally, they combine with the personal pronouns I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. The conjugation pattern for verbs in the present simple goes as follows. Keep the same form as the infinitive in all of the pronouns, except in he, she, it, which only adds an s in the third person. All other forms are the same as the infinitive. Let's take the verb to think. In the present simple, to think will look like this. I think, you think, he, she, it thinks, we think, and they think. Very simple. Now, let's take the verb to run. I run, you run, he, she, it runs, we run, and they run. Now, the verb to speak. I speak, you speak, he, she, it speaks, we speak, and they speak. Now, the verb to look. I look, you look, he, she, it looks, we look, and they look. This pattern is very simple, but there are spelling rules for special verbs that have special endings. All of the verbs that I showed so far are regular, so there are some irregular patterns. In English, you can find verbs that end in O, CH, SH, and SS. These verbs have special endings, and they will have a spelling change in the he, she, it pronouns. While the rest of the conjugations will be the same as the infinitive, the third person will use es in he, she, it instead of simply s. A common verb that ends in O is to go. I go, you go, he, she, it goes, we go, and you go. Another common verb is do. I do, you do, he, she, it does, we do, and they do. A verb that ends in ch is to teach. I teach, you teach, he, she, it teaches, we teach, and they teach. A verb that ends in sh is to finish. I finish, you finish, he, she, it finishes, we finish, and they finish. A verb that ends in ss is to pass. I pass, you pass, he, she, it passes, we pass, and they pass. So far, not that complicated. Aside from this rule, you can also find English verbs that end in a consonant plus y, like to carry and to study. These verbs will also keep the infinitive form in every pronoun except in he, she, it, where ies will be used instead of s or es. I carry, you carry, he, she, it carries, we carry, and they carry. I study, you study, he, she, it studies, we study, and they study. In addition, English has modal verbs that always keep the same form as the infinitive in every pronoun, like can, may, might, should, and must. These verbs will always have the same word in every pronoun, so they're the easiest to remember. Finally, English has the verb to have, which means to own something. To have has the most irregular pattern in he, she, it, which turns into has. While the rest of the conjugations have the same form as the infinitive, he, she, it has. I have, you have, he, she, it has, we have, and they have. Besides, to have has a common but informal construction, which is to have got. Used in British and American English, to have got means to have when it's followed by a noun, or to have to do something, followed by the preposition to and a verb. The conjugations of to have got are the same as to have. I have got, you have got, he, she, it has got, we have got, and they have got. Moreover, English has a special contraction when it comes to the verb to have got. English contractions are a way to combine two words to make them shorter. They're very useful in conversational tones, which allows for a better sentence flow and saves time. Such contractions exist in the verb to have got, the verb to be, negative combinations, and past and future verb conjugations. These topics are for future videos, but to have got is something that I'll show in this video. To make a contraction using to have got, we take any pronoun, put an apostrophe after, add the letters VE, which are apart from the word have, and put the word got. In he, she, it, the letter S is used instead because of the word has. Essentially, in the verb to have got, the contractions will look and sound like this. I've got, you've got, he's got, she's got, it's got, we've got, and they've got. This contraction can only be used after pronouns and not nouns, which is a vital detail to know for future videos. After knowing the conjugations for all of these verbs, the best way to utilize them would be in questions. Asking questions using these verbs is not that hard because the only thing we do is place a conjugated verb before a subject to give a question-like tone. For instance, I can ask, "Have you got a job?" The reply can be, "Yes, I have got a job." The same can apply to any other subject, like, "Has he got a job?" Yes, he has got a job. Notice how in the first question, have got is used, but in the second, it's has got, because the subject is he. The same principle also goes for basic verbs that I showed at the beginning. The only difference is that English has the auxiliary verb do. This verb, do, is an auxiliary verb that is specifically used to make questions and to emphasize a verb in a question. Its common forms are do and does in the present and did in the past. It can also help other verbs in their basic forms, which make actions stand alone in every tense in English. For now, it's only relevant in the present simple, with verbs like to speak, to run, to think, and to look. To make questions in the present simple, we use the auxiliary verbs do and does, which come before the subject. Here are a few basic questions. Does he speak English? Do you run a lot? Do they think in general? Does she look beautiful? All of these questions can be answered with the auxiliary verb in a different order, or using the present simple conjugations as they were. We can respond by saying, yes, he does speak English. Yes, you do run a lot. Yes, they do think in general. And yes, she does look beautiful. These answers all use the auxiliary verb directly from the question, just in a different order, and corresponding to every pronoun. However, we can respond by using the present simple conjugations, such as, yes, he speaks English. Yes, you run a lot. Yes, they think in general. And yes, she looks beautiful. In this case, the conjugations are standard, so some use the infinitive form, while others have the ending s. And for special verbs, each one will follow the patterns that I showed previously with the corresponding pronouns.